Well, hello, everybody. This is Manny Aragon of the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance, and I want to welcome everybody to today's installment of the Endurance Summit. And today we've got there's so many interesting folks we're talking to, but today's panelist actually holds a special place in my heart, and because this is such a topic that folks, I think, don't really talk about much, but experience. It's kind of an emotional topic for people, especially triathletes and often beginners. Perhaps there'll be some more experienced people who also share this challenge, but people who are essentially fearful or have anxiety in groups swimming and group swim starts. That's typical of an Ironman event or a triathlon. So today's panelist is actually really well fitted to this because she's a former ocean lifeguard, spent years and has a ton of experience dealing with people who are in trouble in the water. And I imagine also being able to tell who is and who is not in trouble in the water, kind of a specialty I imagine honed over the years of lifeguarding. She's the founder of Fearless Swimming and offers the best in the business open water training for triathletes. She helps athletes with the most difficult part of open water swimming, which is anxiety management. If you're a triathlete, I'm sure you have you either know somebody or you've gone through this yourself where you get in the swim start and everything's cool until all of a sudden, at the last moment or in the middle of a couple of minutes in, you get swum over a couple times and all of a sudden you're in crisis. So this is right up the alley for that. It's really, and Ingrid, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's really, it's almost more, there's certainly some physical training, but it's almost more psychological training, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and a lot of it is just learning to know what to expect and what swimming in an open water race environment will bring. And I think there's a fundamental assumption that it's going to be something like swimming in the pool, and it's really not. And people are just caught off guard by that. And they're shocked, and often they have some sort of traumatic emotional experience because of that, which is unfortunate because then they have to undo that bad memory.
Exactly, that's exactly it. And I want to make sure that I flesh out your credentials here a little bit, because not that what I've said isn't enough for most people, but it's not only that you do that, but you're also certified in total immersion, which is I have not trained in total immersion, but from what I know of it, it has to do with relaxing and just kind of swimming. Is that also true, or am I butchering it here?
And I think the closest parallel is that total immersion swimming is very mindful swimming. It's I guess it's like when you learn any new skill, you can't just do it without thinking about it. Like people that are really good runners can run and they're not thinking about their running. And if you struggle with running, you're constantly thinking, okay, is my form good? Is my posture good? Am I breathing right? And good swimming also requires that kind of focus. And focus within and focus into your sense of balance and movement in the water is also critical to manage your anxiety in the water. So they're very similar, and it's a very nice marriage of two different things that I teach that blend together and are exceptionally appropriate for adult onset learners, swimmers, which is most of the triathlete population.
So let me ask you this then. Is this, now, you've written several books, but what is this kind of the topic of fearless swimming for triathletes? Are you also teaching total immersion techniques in there, or is it primarily dealing with anxiety? What would you say is the bent of the book?
Oh, the book is definitely anxiety management. It does not have any total immersion freestyle technique in it at all. I separate very clearly, freestyle technique, I teach it in a pool. The Fearless Swimming book and the open water skills are something separate from that. Now, clearly, I assume that you are able to swim, all right? But the anxiety management stuff is not, how to hold your head and how to keep your balance in the water and all of the same thing. It's a different notion. So in my classes, I make it really specific. I can coach technique in a pool, but then I also do a lot of open water stuff. And often my clients will end up doing both because they have issues in both. But I keep them really separate.
So say I'm at the beginning of the race and the gun goes off, and 30 seconds in, all of a sudden I'm experiencing anxiety. What are some of the ways that you teach people to deal with that? What are some of the things they can do to avoid that situation or to get out of that if they've gotten into it?
Well, the most important, of course, is to back up a few steps and have a plan before you ever go into the water as to how you're going to head off this problem. Because, if you've been in a state of anxiety, and I'm sure you felt that, there's a sense of time sort of running away from you and losing control of your thoughts and your body. And it's very hard when you're in a crisis situation to take control back. 99.9% of what I teach is I think of it as a toolbox, and I give people a handful of tools that they can try out in class, and they can say, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, maybe I'm going to develop this one a little more, whatever. They walk out with, I picture them walking out with a little toolbox where they've learned a few things that they're going to explore and try that they're going to use for their next race, so that before they get in the water, they know, for instance, they're going to swim 10 strokes at a time, and then they're going to take a breathing break. They're going to take a breathing break whether they're tired or not, whether they're anxious or not. And a breathing break, you're going to say, what the heck is that? I like to say it's real similar to taking a walk break when you do the walk-run thing with running. In swimming, a lot of the anxiety, especially open water swimming, comes from just having your face in the cold water. In addition to the gun going off and 100 people swimming over you. But a lot of it is just putting your face in the water, and so much of that is just straight physiology. And athletes think it's psychology, but it's not that as much as it is your body just reacting to your face being in cold water and your vision is taken away from you. So if you can get your face out of the water relatively early on, just for a short period of time, you're going to keep that anxiety level in check. One of the skills I teach is how to do that in a way that you can continue to move forward in a streamlined way in the water. It's almost like doing a side stroke type of thing. I generally advise against rolling over on your back. It's very disorienting to just look up at the sky when you're already disoriented and scared. Plus, you have no idea what's going on around you. And when you roll back over on your stomach, you kind of sit there for a minute, vertical in the water, and it's really disruptive to people around you. So if you can go into sort of a side stroke thing, keep a lead arm extended and paddle with the other arm. I hate to say it, but there's a lot of swimmers that actually move faster in the water that way than when they do regular freestyle. But this is just an example of a tool that we practice in the class, and it's really helpful for people because if you're taking control of the situation before your anxiety takes hold, you're never going to get to that point of hyperventilating and panicking. And, if you can get out to the first buoy and you're still feeling good, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to extend my breathing breaks to maybe every 20 strokes until it becomes boring. I like to say the antidote to fear is boredom. When you're bored with it, you don't need it anymore. Then go out and finish your race and have a good time. But those first few minutes are so critical, as you point out.
Now, I can say I'm generally pretty calm. I almost never experience anxiety before races, and even in the water. But there have been occasional times when it's happened. One of the things that seems to help for me, and this, I don't know if this is part of your program or if this has, I'd like to get your take on it, is actually a while back, people started noticing that during the swim is when, folks were succumbing. They were succumbing during the swim, and there's a lot of speculation about why that was.
Right.
One of the speculations was that people weren't properly warming up, and they were kind of getting the shock value of jumping in the cold water, having the wetsuit, having the excitement and the anxiety all together. When I can certainly, what I've noticed is when I've started to warm up, so now I make a point of getting in the water and warming up, and that cold water shock is pretty much eliminated when I warm up. Is that something that you've found, or is that just kind of an anomaly on my part, or is that something that you use in your program as well?
That's absolutely correct. And what happens is you have these these sensors all over your body, but you have special receptors around your eyes and your nose, and they're called baroreceptors, and they respond to pressure and cold. And they're a survival mechanism, because if there's pressure and cold on your face near your nose and mouth, chances are you're in the water, and that sends out a danger signal. So you can be a professional like Andy Potts, and he's somebody who has talked about his experiences with open water anxiety. There's not really much else you can call it. And it doesn't matter who you are. That's just a physiological response. That happens when you put your face in cold water. And you need to understand that. And if you can dunk your face in the water first, like you were describing, you have a warm-up should hopefully cover more than just dunking your face. But if that's all you can do, that's going to help tremendously, because your heart rate, first it goes way down, and then it goes way up, and there's just this amazing domino effect of things that happen to you physiologically just from putting your face in the cold water and starting to swim. And that's without people climbing on top of you and without it being a race. So by all means, we talk about that. I urge people to warm up for about 10 minutes if they can. If they're going to, I kind of make a joke of it, go out and have your panic attack during the warm-up. Just get it out of your system, and then you'll be okay. Then get out of the water and make your way in when the gun goes off. But so much of it is, it's a combination of things that are all going on at once. And unless you take a step back and kind of dissect it and take some steps to prepare, these reactions are just sort of a guarantee. And if you're a competent triathlon swimmer, I think you just go through it and you don't necessarily get alarmed by it, but you know it's going to happen, right? You feel it a little bit, and you just kind of keep going, and okay, that's just sort of part of the deal. It's part of the sport.
Right, yeah, you'll get some people swimming over you or grabbing your feet or things like that, and I try and avoid them as much as possible. I don't appreciate them, but yeah, I suppose you're right. You keep moving, and you kind of move in and out of it as it goes, because you are swimming in a pack. So, okay, well, this guy, what's interesting is you brought up a lot of different points, and I have so many questions to ask, but one of them that comes up is, I know you were a lifeguard in the past, but how did you get into triathlon swimming specifically? Where did that, and then safety swimming, like how did that, was there an experience that you had? Was there something that, how did it all happen?
Well, when I got into triathlon, which was about, I don't know, I did one a billion years ago, back when they didn't have clipless pedals yet. It dates me. It's way back. But then I had kids and got married and went away, and then came back again about, 8 or 9 years ago. And swimming was always something that came easy for me, and being in the open water was not an issue at all. But what happened was I'd be at these races, and I'd see this really familiar look of terror on the faces of people out in the water and people getting in the water, and it was just like the old days when I was rescuing people. And it seemed, as I was in the sport and, I subscribed to the magazines and read the books, there just wasn't anybody or anything really addressing the issue of anxiety management in the water. And actually, stress and anxiety management was something that I had done. I'd worked with a professor in college on that a little bit, so it was just always sort of an area of interest. So it kind of started with a book idea that I pitched to my publisher, and they liked it. And I thought, well, I should teach this stuff. I know this is something I really know about, and I think there's a tremendous need for it. So that's sort of how it came about, and it's been really, really satisfying because it just helps people so much.
And that's exactly why I thought of you. When I wanted to include you on this summit, is because it's such a niche training topic, and at the same time, it's so like there's just nobody else doing it.
I know.
Right? I mean, and so it's just like, wow. I mean, if there's so many people out there who are probably scared to death, and they have nowhere to turn, and so everybody in any kind of swimming should know about fearless swimming, because even in the pool, you're swimming laps with the team or whatever, people can go through some anxiety with that. I mean, there are times there, not like in an open water event as much, but where you get swum over if you swim with enough people, especially when you're a kid or a teenager. And I don't think it's ever really dealt with. It's just kind of, I mean, I remember being on swim team and having that happen.
Yeah.
And it just was never dealt with.
And there are a lot of open water swim clinics, before a race, the day before a race, sign up for a clinic.
Right.
But those, I'm just not really excited about those. Those are not really specific anxiety management. It's sort of and I'm not saying they're worthless, but if you're really got anxiety issues, they're not going to be addressed there. You're going to have sort of a tour of the course, which is nice, and you kind of get familiar with it, get in the water, get wet. But it's not, the people that are running these aren't really doing research to try and figure out how to help people with anxiety. And I really wanted to take it a step further. And stuff I put in my books, I'm not just making it up. I actually look it up and find research and find things that work and do my best to pass that along. And I think that's really where I can contribute to the sport. And I'm just really happy that I can do that.
Yeah, such a great tool. Now let me ask you a couple kind of more specific and I suppose they're technical questions, but I've seen Facebook pictures and postings of people going through your courses, and it seems like you have a lot of group play in the pool and probably in open water as well. I don't know about that as much, but where people are kind of getting together and purposely creating a swim scrum and I suppose using their tools or getting a sense of their vulnerability or whatever it is. What's the deal with that?
Well, I encourage people to practice their open water skills in the pool, and of course, one of the open water skills is mob swimming. Okay, mob swimming is exactly what it sounds like. It's on race day, it's the beginning of the race where there are arms and legs and people all over the place. And most people look at that as, geez, get me out of this place. How long do I have to wait till I can really swim? And what I encourage people to do first is to really accept and embrace mob swimming as triathlon swimming, because the more races you do, the bigger races you do, you get up to Ironman. I mean, it's mob swimming the whole 2.4 miles. There is no escape. It is a different, if you need to think of it as a different sport, think of it that way. And if you can look at the mob as just part of the fun and the craziness of this sport, I think that you'll be better off. And just about any tool that you need in open water, including the mob swimming, can be practiced in the pool and should be. So, for instance, I have a training group I'm working with right now, and every Saturday morning we do a pool workout, but we also do mob swimming practice. So we get 15, 20 people in one lane, and we swim, we go one length and then go under the lane lines and come another length. So everybody's always swimming in the same direction. But this group is so used to swimming on top of each other. That's just like part of what we do. And it's been, what's great about it is everybody has a great time. That's like the most fun part of the workout. And people are completely at ease with bumping into each other and elbows and knees and splashing, and it's just not a big deal anymore. And, that's really available to just about every triathlete. If you go to a master's program, I don't see why they can't throw a bunch of us in the pool in one lane and have us swim on top of each other for a little while. You get used to it. And it's a skill like anything else, I tell people, think of yourself as one little anchovy in one of those giant schools of anchovies, okay? The whole school is like a single organism. This is your family. These are your people. This is your safety. You don't want to be that one little fish swimming all by yourself, out in the wilderness. There's safety and the comfort is with your group. So get comfortable with being in that group. And the more comfortable you are and the more often you swim that way, you learn little subtle techniques for sliding past people, for swimming shoulder to shoulder with somebody. It's just such a valuable education, but you have to put yourself there before race day.
Certainly, I agree. And, the last minute, day before isn't really going to it's not going to help you with the tools at all. I mean, you can't really build a tool set in 24 hours. So
exactly.
Something that's come up for me during races, and I'm sure just about everybody else, is you get through the initial scrum and you're swimming along pretty nicely, and maybe halfway or not at the buoy or whatever, maybe past that, but you're cruising along and you've got a really good stride going there, and next thing you know, like with no warning, somebody swims over you in the middle of the race. So some of the things that's come up for me with that is oftentimes it's hard to get my groove back after that.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe my performance has been a little bit, it could have been better, but so what's the best way to deal with things like that in terms of some performance but still having to deal with those kind of random incidents that occur?
Well, one of the things in the mob swimming practice is you should always swim over each other. We call those swim overs. That's a real unique name. But and you learn how to respond to that by just kind of going limp and letting the person swim over you. But your real question is something that's real common, which is, when I swim in open water, I don't ever feel like I'm in my groove. I don't have that sense of rhythm I have in the pool.
Yeah.
And, if you look at it, when you swim in the pool, you don't swim for a mile, 1.2 miles or 2.4. You swim 25 yards or meters, 25, 25, 25, 25. There's a turn. There's either it's a flip turn or a wall turn, but there is a break, and it's a physical break, but more important, it's a mental break. And one of the tools that's really helpful is to just, when you're in the pool, count your strokes, so that you know how many strokes it takes you generally to get across the pool. So let's say it's 20 strokes, all right? Now when you're in open water, you count to 20, you've done a lap in your mind. Now you reset, 20 strokes, reset, 20 strokes, reset. Your brain is wired to swim 20 strokes and then have a reset. So you might as well just build that into your swim, into your race plan, that you're thinking in terms of 20 strokes at a time. And that, so in your scenario, if you get swum over, then maybe it'll mess you up for a few strokes, but you just start counting to 20 again, and that'll get you back into your rhythm.
So just pick right up. That's a great tool, actually. I never even thought. I'm always counting strokes in the water, in open water for sure, for sighting purposes. That's how I use it. But yeah, you make a great point for just getting that rhythm. Because honestly, I never quite seem to swim as quickly in open water as I do in the pool. And perhaps it's because I'm not swimming straight. Perhaps it's because I'm not in my groove or whatever. Yeah. But maybe it's the wetsuit's a little constricting or something. Although that should speed me up theoretically.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
but you bring up a point.
But
you bring up a point. I just want to give you one more little thing,
sure,
and that
sure.
is with in terms of the rhythm. And there is a tool called a tempo trainer, which is a metronome, and I use it with my swimmers extensively. Now, there's some controversy whether this thing is race legal because it's a device that you wear in your cap. It's just a beeper. And I guess the question is that considered a headset? And if a race official considers that a headset, it's not legal. So theoretically, if you tuck it into your collar or somewhere else on your wetsuit, I don't know that you could put it someplace that you would hear it, but if it's anywhere else but on your head, it is legal. So what I tell people is, this is something you ask for forgiveness, not permission. You don't go up to a race official on race day with your beeper and say, "Can I wear this?" You just stick it in your cap and go with it, and the likelihood of anybody figuring it out is nil. All it does is it just beeps to a rhythm. The fact that it beeps to a rhythm is not the thing that makes it potentially illegal. You understand? It's like an iPod. It's just they don't want some sort of noise going in your ear because I don't know. I mean, I can imagine on the bike, obviously you don't want an iPod, but in the swim, I can't imagine that a beep is going to be a safety concern. Because actually what it does, you can set the timing of this beep. And if you think of the beep like sitting in a rocking chair or rocking a baby, it is a very, very soothing stimulus. And a lot of my swimmers put that beep on, and they use the same tempo they use in the pool, and now they're instantly wired back into their swimming rhythm for the pool. And all they're focusing is on is the next beep and the next beep and the next beep.
Good point. That's actually a great tool, and honestly, with so many people putting their Garmins in their caps anyway, how would a race official really know unless you've got an earpiece, which I don't think you need for that device.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. Well, let me. So let's set the scenario then. I'm in the water, and I think we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but I'm in the water and anxiety is taking hold. What are some of the tools that I can use to get out of that situation?
Okay. Well, an immediate thing is get your face out of the water.
Okay.
You don't need to roll over on your back, as I said. If you just do some sort of a side stroke or even a modified breaststroke, you're going to instantly feel better. Number 2, slow down. Third one is to do something that's sort of counterintuitive. When you're stressed, you think, I need to take a deep breath and let out all this stress. Well, when you take a deep breath, especially when you've got a wetsuit on, you tend to take, a big breath high in your chest, and the feeling of compression and constriction is just magnified, which really is worse than what I suggest you do, which is think in terms of taking slower, shallower breaths. This is known as belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. Mm-hmm. And it's actually what fighter pilots in the military use to keep themselves from getting airsick. It actually tones down your fight or flight response, which is very much tied to seasickness or air sickness. It's sort of the same pathway. And if you can slow your breathing down, you will feel calmer. Now, I'm not suggesting that you hang out in the water in the middle of a race until you're, almost asleep, you're so calm. But if in your mind you're saying, slow down, slow and shallow breaths, while you've obviously slowed down your pace, that's going to help you feel better. Especially if you've practiced it beforehand and you have confidence that it works, then it's a tremendous tool. But the scenario you're giving me is, somebody just finds themselves out there and they haven't planned. What do you do? The breathing breaks and the slowing down the breathing absolutely helps.
That's huge, and I know that I've used that actually in running as well, especially in the later stage of a race where I'm my form's falling apart and I'm really starting to slow down a bit, is to come back to my breath and come back to relaxation and that whole response. And inevitably, I pick up speed in my form and all that. So I could see how they could totally work in the water, as well. And it's not that in running the anxiety is not the same, but there is, if you're kind of at your limit, and there's a point where you feel like you could blow up, and end up walking or maintain a pace and get through the end of the race, perhaps PRing, it's useful in that. So I'll have to take that into the water. That's great advice. And what other, we talked about cold water a little bit. What about now, I kind of mentioned that I never quite swim as fast as I'd like to in the water. I'm guessing I'm zigzagging all over the place. I often don't even use a Garmin in the water because I don't. It's like not even worth the extra trouble to me. It seems.
Yeah.
I just look at the clock. But what are some of the ways to deal with that scenario? Swimming.
Okay.
Free swimming.
Well, yeah. If you're swimming slower in open water than you are in the pool, then there's definitely an open water swimming skill issue. Something's going on. The first thing is, and this is, all these things are things that are addressed in my class, is do you swim straight? Do you know which way you tend to turn? Now, if you've raced a lot, you may know. But one of the fun ways to find out is I line people up, about a line of about 5 swimmers, and they're about, 5 or 6 yards apart. And they have to close their eyes and keep their eyes closed for 30 strokes. And the rest of the class sits in the water and watches them. And invariably, there's one swimmer who in 30 strokes will do a complete circle. When they can't see where they're going. It's kind of like being lost in the woods, right?
Yeah,
you tend to turn to one side and eventually you make a circle. Some people are naturally fairly straight, but it is incredible how extreme you can get off course. Now, of course, when you're racing, you're supposedly sighting, right? But a lot of people don't sight often enough. They don't know how often they should be sighting. And just knowing, for instance, that you tend to turn, let's say that you know that you turn sharply to the right after about 15 strokes. Well, now you're never going to go more than 15 strokes without sighting. Plus, if you do, when you look up, you're going to look to your left for the buoy because you tend to go off course to the right. So knowing, your personal idiosyncrasies in terms of which way you tend to pull is really helpful. Also, sighting and really absorbing what you see. What a lot of swimmers do is they lift their head, look for the buoy, and they sort of forget that they're looking for the buoy because it's like the information doesn't really go into your brain. You have to be aware of what you're looking for. And what I tell people to look for is don't bother with the buoy. It doesn't matter how big the buoy is. You won't see it. It's just impossible. But what you will see, what I can guarantee is that there's going to be a mob of people in front of you on the swim, and they are looking for that buoy like mad, and they are descending upon this target. So look up and look for the group of caps in front of you. That's what you're looking for. And sometimes it may take, 2 or 3 little peaks before your brain really processes what you saw, little snapshots. You don't have to have your head up for 2 or 3 or 4 strokes for your brain to connect. But you do need to keep looking enough times that you do consciously say, oh, yes, that's where I need to go. That's helpful as well.
And do you have a recommendation as to how many strokes people swim before they sight, or?
It is something that you can certainly test, but I would say I wouldn't go over 10 very often. If you're fairly straight, you can do 10. If you can sight skillfully, meaning you can just lift your eyes out of the water without combining that with a breathing stroke, so you're just, they call it alligator eyes. If you can remain streamlined and moving forward well when you sight, you can sight every 4 or 5 strokes, and it doesn't interfere at all. But again, you have to practice that. Doing that changes your posture in the water. If you haven't done it in the pool, you're not going to suddenly be able to do this seamlessly on race day. So that's a skill thing that you learn and practice.
For sure, yeah. That's actually something that I picked up in a recent open water swim clinic and practicing now, because it appeared that I was pulling my head too far out of the water, so sinking down and slowing myself down. But so many good things. Now, what other types of things do you incorporate into your workshops, and what should people know about? Are workshops the only way to work with you? Are there other ways? Do you do videos, or can people use your books? What's the What's the best way for people to learn fearless
I've
swimming?
got, of course, my website sort of has a summary of all the various programs that I offer. I do the open water anxiety management course once a month. I used to do it a few times a year, and I'd have a big mob of people. And invariably someone would contact me and say, I've got a race in 4 weeks and I can't wait. I need help now. So I just do it once a month. I don't care if there's, probably the smallest class is maybe 4 people. But I always invite alumni to come back to the class. Once you've taken the open water class, you can retake it as often as you like. And the magic in that is that I always have people come to do the water part of the class, so I have a nice mob so we can practice our mob swimming. So there's that's a once a month class. That's a 3-hour class. I also do, it's generally a one-on-one class for dealing with the surf, how to get through the surf, and that's a separate thing altogether because that's a whole different skill set. I also do, probably my most popular program is my flat fee coaching program. And basically the athlete and I get together and set a goal, something that's attainable within about 6 weeks with diligent practice. And often that's something like swim a mile, or I want to be able to do a sprint triathlon and stay calm in the water. Or I just want to swim 100 yards in the pool without drowning, whatever it is. And that's it's usually about a once-a-week lesson, but I'm invested in the athlete's success. We don't finish until that athlete has reached that goal. And triathletes are just so hungry for that kind of attention. Because, you can take a lesson or two, but that doesn't guarantee a result. And I guarantee a result. And I work with you until we've got you to that level that you're happy with. And people love that. They want help.
For sure. No, absolutely. And most people are training alone so much of the time, so it really helps to have that one-on-one contact and that kind of personalized attention. Now, what is you mentioned your website, but what's the best way? Is that the best way then for people to get involved with what you have to offer? What about people who are not in the area? People who aren't living in the area, how can they get involved?
Well, of course, my book is available on Amazon and all over the place. If you go to my website, you'll see my email. It's all over the place, and you can contact me. I'm one of those people who's, I'm going to email you back quickly. You don't have to wait. You're not going to wait 2 or 3 days to hear back from me. If I'm not teaching in the pool or in the open water, I'm sitting at my computer, and I'm very responsive. I have Fearless Swimming has a Facebook page. You can find me there. Just my personal Facebook page, you can find me there. So I'm not hiding. Anybody, if you just Google Fearless Swimming, you're going to find me. And I'm happy to help in whatever way I can.
Great. Well, awesome. This has been such a great talk. I always love, Ingrid, I know we've met before, and probably we haven't had quite as extensive of a talk, but what I think you do, what you do, I think is fabulous. And like I said, it's one of those invaluable little niche gems that come out of, I suppose, and I wonder if there's anybody else doing anything like this anywhere. But it's super valuable because triathlon is one of those sports where people are, certainly coming and sticking around, but there's a fair number of people who kind of move in and out of the sport. And it seems to me that those people are going to be often the ones who are really, they might move out of the sport. And what I hear from a lot of people is, I don't like the swimming.
Right.
So wow, what an opportunity to, get rid of that problem and just enjoy it. Because swimming can be quite enjoyable if you're not scared.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you do some triathlons and you're really overwhelmed by the mob problem, then there's always just plain open water swimming. That's so sedate because you swim by yourself with all this water around you. It's so peaceful. It's not nearly as fun the way I feel about it, but you've got to choose. If you want to play the game, this is the deal. You deal with the mob and the craziness, and that's part of what makes the sport so exciting and such a challenge.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I really appreciate you being part of this summit, and hopefully hopefully people have gotten good information out of this. I have, certainly. I've gotten a few tips, and I generally don't experience anxiety in the water, but even so, you've offered things that I'm going to go out and use. So I really thank you for your for your efforts in coming and doing this. And other than that, thanks to everybody else for coming and joining us. And again, Ingrid's contact info will be available on the website. So please,
and anybody that gets in touch with me and mentions that they heard of me through the summit gets a $25 discount on any of my programs or classes. So I'm happy to hear from you.
Awesome. Bonus there. And so take advantage of that because she doesn't offer that very often. So once again, thanks everybody for coming. And this is Manny Aragon of the Rolf Workshop. And I'll be seeing you on the next one. All the best.